Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Puck and Leafs podcast. I'm your Joe Choffs with Coach Frank. We had a couple weeks off to re-energize, and in that time, a lot has changed in Leafs Nation. Frankie, the last time we spoke, Kyle Dubas had just been fired, and that was the biggest news. And we had discussed who the next GM might be, and obviously Brad Treliving's name had come up, and lo and behold, he ends up being the guy. I know there's a lot more to talk about, especially what's going on with the team right now. But I did want to touch upon this with you. What did you make of the Brad Treliving hire? Did you like it? Did you wish they went in another route? Or what's your overall impression of the hire?
I wish I had one, Joe. I just think it's, I'm in the same boat I did when Dubas took over for Lamoriello. Maybe in a different context because Lamoriello has had such an impressive resume with the Devils and coming over, and you kind of want to let Dubas make his first few moves before he had any reaction to it. I think you and I both agreed at the time that the timing was just kind of odd. So really anybody they brought in there was going to be a head scratcher, other than if they could try to pry somebody from a team, which it didn't look like it was going to be a possibility. The more I've read Treliving's departure from Calgary and his press conference, I'm a little bit more encouraged, I guess you could probably say. Like I said, he wasn't my first choice, but understanding he's coming from a Canadian market seems to be really good with the media. None of these odd riddles, and just gets right to the point.
And he's got some personality to him. He's got some humor to him.
I like it.
Yeah, when he announced the pick at the draft, had that one-liner about Bill Guerin picking up the tab at Tootsie's. I thought that was pretty funny. But anyway, sorry to cut you off.
No, it's all right. And understanding his departure from Calgary, he wasn't fired. Understanding what was going on in the background with the players and how they were kind of revolting against Sutter. And he was like, you know what, enough of this. I'm out. And understanding that he has this this liking or this shift towards analytics and sports science that he really didn't have in Calgary because they didn't have the assets to do it. So, having him come to a organization like Toronto that has all the resource and the capital for him to do more, let's say, than in Calgary. And, and sorry to anybody from Calgary that listens to this, but it's kind of a shit show right now. When you got, 5 or 6 players going to your organization say, I want out, doesn't really say much about the organization, maybe about the city. But Treliving's in a situation where, quote unquote, it's the mecca of hockey. Toronto is a desirable city. He's now sitting in a seat where players want to either stay or want to come play for a contender. So let him cook. I guess that's what the kids say now. Hey, let him cook. And we'll see how it goes.
I wasn't too thrilled about the hire. I wasn't too upset about it either. I just thought it was the easy, safe pick.
Yep.
And by the time Dubas was fired and then they hired Treliving, I don't know, what was it, a couple of weeks? I felt like they already knew right away that they were going to hire Treliving, and they just let us on for like 2 weeks. Like, we're doing this extensive search. Extensive.
Yeah.
But really, he was the guy all along. So
yes,
it just seemed too easy for me. I don't know. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I'm willing to give him obviously a shot here. He obviously made his first couple moves before the draft. One was to re-sign David Kämpf to a 4-year deal at $2.4 million. And the second was to lock up Pontus Holmberg for 2 years at $900,000 or $800,000, something like that, which I thought was a good move. But the David Kämpf one, that was his first one. I didn't mind bringing Kämpf back. I think Kämpf does a lot of dirty work for this team. He takes a lot of defensive zone starts, which allows for the big guys to get the offensive zone starts. $2.4 million with the cap going up. Probably it's really not a big deal to me. I just didn't understand why they needed to go 4 years on it. That was the big head scratcher for me, especially when you got Holmberg, who is the heir apparent, the guy you want to replace him with, I would assume. I don't know.
I think, well, I can tell you just from my own, opinion watching Holmberg, he's got more offensive
Oh,
ability than Kämpf does.
absolutely.
I think Holmberg might be a little bit. I wouldn't be shocked if Holmberg starts on the wing. But again, we'll see that roster when it plays out. But the thing with Kämpf, and I kind of, again, it's one of those things where it's like it doesn't really move the needle. But in this landscape, every dollar counts. And I think the 4 years probably, you're going to think I'm crazy. That 4 years probably brought his annual salary down. From what I've read, he would have gotten over 3 on the open market because of the position. He's a great penalty killer. Underrated on the draws. I think he's pretty good on faceoffs. He was playing in the first penalty kill pairing with Marner. Again, doesn't score a lot, but reading what I read from Treliving today after the draft, he's kind of penciled in as a third line center.
See, that's not good enough for me. That's what scares me. I know that doesn't move the needle for me. He is not a third line center on a cup winning team. I'm sorry, he's not. No. So if he's going to be your third line center, okay, the dollar amount, what you're spending on that third line center, 2.4 to spend on your third line center is great, but he just doesn't have what you want out of your third line center. We've talked so many times about this team doesn't get depth scoring in the playoffs and they struggle to score in the playoffs. And this guy is going to be your third line center. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's like we haven't learned anything over the last 7 years.
Yeah, it's hard to justify the year more so than the term. Than the salary. Again, you're talking to Treliving today. He's saying essentially that, again, the guys like him, the coaches like him. So I'm trying to say to myself, there's no way this guy knows this team this quickly. This is not a Treliving signing. This is a Shanahan, Keefe combination. And dare I say, maybe some of the players, maybe Austin Matthews. It's possible that maybe there's a liking there. So I think there's just a combination there. I also think they're sweating a bit with 10 UFAs and all these guys pricing themselves out right now. That Leafs pretty much can only retain Kämpf. I think there was a bit of a, I wouldn't say they're, kind of bending over backwards, but I think things started to be a little bit of a urgency to get some of these guys signed. I think that played into Kämpf's favor, and this is what you got. Hey, listen, it could have been worse. It could have been Kerfoot at 3.
But there's a rumor that they are interested in bringing back Kerfoot, which I think is crazy.
I don't see it. Not after what I listened to Treliving's post draft conference. He's focused on the top dogs, and until he gets that figured out, I don't think he can bring Kerfoot in at anything like that. Let alone, you just got to move on. At some point, you just got to, cut the leash and just get a different look. And you got to move on.
You mentioned all the RFAs and UFAs that they have to sign and, roster spots they have to fill, and they have limited cap space to do it. And yet they're not going to use this buyout window to buy out Matt Murray. What'd you make of that decision? It's puzzling to me. I think that's just
well, again, Joel, let's look at it from the outside in, right?
And what I read, you could correct me. What I read was if they were to buy him out, his cap penalty would be about $1 million or under $1 million this year. And then it would be about $2 million next season when the cap goes significantly higher. So you're worried about that $2 million coming off the books for next year for sure. But this year it would save you around $3 million, which is huge.
Yes, I would have been with you there if 18 hours ago, maybe, Treliving would have traded into the second round, added a pick, and traded that to San Jose or Chicago, like they did with Mrazek to move that Murray contract. That went out the window when, with Chicago now taking on Perry and Hall's contract. Like, there's not many teams willing to take on money. Like Arizona pretty much came out and said, we're not doing that anymore. Like, we're trying to win. So there's not very few out there, like maybe San Jose, but they just picked up Blackwood. I think all signs are pointing to LTIR. I don't think it's going to be a buyout. However, Treliving did again say today that they're not going to use anybody on the first buyout window, but he went on to mention there is a second one in the summer. So it's probably still a possibility, but like LTIR would probably be the best way to do it. But like, how do you tell a guy, or how's that guy not going to file a grievance with the Players Association and say, listen, I can go? No, you're injured.
No, please, you're injured. No. Listen to our doctor. Listen to our guy. Please.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, I think it's going to be in the LTIR because they're not going to move that contract.
Much of the big news over the last day on Twitter has been about William Nylander. We know he's going into the last year of his contract. His 10-team no-trade list kicks in on July 1st. And the word is from Elliot Friedman and other insiders is that they're far apart on a contract extension. The Leafs want it to be in the 8s. Nylander wants it to be in the 9s, high 9s, maybe even 10s. Where do you fall on this? And is this where the core finally gets shaken up for the Toronto Maple Leafs?
I think it's always been the obvious choice, Joe.
It's the choice that has
it makes the most sense.
It takes the least amount of balls to do it.
Yeah, number one. Number two, you could probably maximize the value of a guy coming off a career year, 40 goals, 80 points.
I mean, we just saw what Dubois went for.
Yeah, and that
was a nice package.
And that was Dubois kind of like thinking he had the Jets in the corner saying, I'm only going here or here.
Yeah.
You really had two teams kind of, bidding against each other. I was thoroughly impressed by the return that they got. So here's the other thing. William Nylander is a $9 million player. In my opinion, you're starting a team, you put your cap together. William Nylander is a first line $9 million right winger. No doubt about it. He is not a $9 million first line winger in 2023 on the Leafs. That's the problem. And I'll tell you another thing. If he's looking for 9.5, I look at Matt Tkachuk making 9.5 in Florida. He's not Matt Tkachuk, man. He's not Matthew Tkachuk. I'm sorry. And that's an issue for me. And when you're looking at comparisons, although I'd love to compare it to the Timo Meier deal that just signed in, I think that's probably a better comparison.
I thought that was a very good comparable, but Nylander has better numbers than him. Meier's never put up the amount of points and goals that Nylander has.
I agree. But I think I think what New Jersey's trying to do is taking a leap of faith on the fact that, again, the cap is going up. They got a lot of guys that are signed. He's actually the highest paid player. I actually was shocked that Jack Hughes is coming in at 8. Like, unbelievable work that Fitzgerald's doing. So, like, I'm looking at comparables. Man, I didn't think Dubas really screwed this thing up with again, we're not going to harp on it, but like paying guys before they won anything. And like, you're sitting here and saying when Marner's up in 2 years, you really think he's going to get a pay cut?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's making 11. You know what I mean? So,
but that's my argument is that why not try to trade him and sign Willy, because we know Willy could score in the playoffs. Mitch has 1 goal or 2 goals in like the last 50 playoff games.
Sign me up, Joe. You know me. We're not going down this road again. Here's the problem. I'm going to try to hopefully make this make sense. Who is a better all-around player, Mitch Marner or William Nylander?
Mitch Marner, because he's a great defensive player and he can penalty kill.
Are we in agreement that if you were to make a trade right now, Mitch Marner for whatever, you're not going to win the deal, right?
It's difficult, but
would you say that if you make a deal right now for William Nylander before July 1st without a no movement clause, that you can win the deal?
I think you could, but you probably have to let him talk to the other teams and have a contract extension in the works.
Correct.
Then you probably get more out of it.
And
especially if it's like a sign and trade, which is what Winnipeg and LA just did.
And the other piece that's really not working to his favor, who was the agent that did
Louis Gross.
Johnny Gaudreau negotiation? Louis Gross. So Brad Treliving,
he doesn't want to get burned by him again. I get that.
You know the George Bush saying, "Fool me once, shame on
fool me twice. You don't want to fool me again." Yeah, exactly. I get it. I keep going back and forth with this. So these are the list of players that are list of right wingers that are currently making over $9 million. David Pastrnak, Mitch Marner, Mark Stone, Matthew Tkachuk, Nikita Kucherov, and Mikko Rantanen. I don't think he's in that echelon of players.
Jack Eichel, also 10 million?
He's a center. I thought right wingers.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Okay.
So should he be paid like those guys? I don't think so. But here's the problem. If he wants 9.5 and we're okay giving him 8.8, that's okay. We're talking about $700,000 here. We just gave David Kämpf $700,000 more than he probably should have got. At least that's what we think. And that's the difference between us signing him and trading him, a guy that we love, that's drafted and developed by us. We know he could perform in the playoffs. I think that's crazy to me. I don't know. But then on the other hand, I see the package that Winnipeg was able to get. And I think, man, maybe the Leafs can get an even better package, although he doesn't play center. And we know centers go for there's always a premium put on guys that can play center. So I don't know. It's tough for me because I love Willy. Now, here's the other thing.
We all do. Like
you mentioned, Treliving, he's got to kind of put his foot down at this point and say, this is how much we're willing to spend. If you don't like it, we're going the trade route. And it kind of sends a message to the other guys, like, we're not going to be taken advantage of. It kind of sucks that you look around the league and you see guys taking discounts so that they can win. Timo Meier said it, I believe it was his quote today, like, you got to take less in order to win. Why isn't that the mindset over here? Although it was reported that Austin Matthews wants to take less now all of a sudden to build a better team around him, but he's not going to sign 8 years.
No, he was never going to sign 8 years.
Yeah, and another thing with the Nylander contract is I don't know if I want to sign him to 8 years either.
Well, that's a good point, Joe. Like, you're going to get him on the back half of that deal at what, 35? You don't want to get locked into that. So
you don't.
People have to understand that too, right? Like, it has its advantages. Again, just before we get to that, let's just say Austin Matthews signs a 4-year deal. Not ideal. But what if he signs another 4-year deal after that? You know what I mean? Like, he loves the city. Well, I think we understand that. If he didn't, he would have been gone by now.
But why is he the only guy that is signing short-term deals? Like Brian Hayes on Overdrive said, why does he have to be the only guy?
What is to say that those 8-year deals are not going to work out for other teams?
Yeah, I don't know. For Austin, the age that he's at right now,
8-year deal work.
I want the 8-year deal for him, or at least 7. Like, not 4 years. That's crazy to me.
I get it, but you know what? If you add the other 3 years to this 5, it's kind of like they signed him to 8 years anyways, right? Originally. So anyways, about the thing about Nylander too is the funny thing about Nylander now is that I don't know if you just saw it. As I'm talking to you, I'm kind of scrolling Twitter. They have identified 3 teams as being in the lead, believe it or not, for William Nylander services as of right now. And you're not going to believe who these teams are. Ready, Joe? The Ottawa Senators, the Detroit Red Wings, and the Edmonton Oilers have all had substantial conversations with Toronto about William Nylander, according to Chris Johnson. And this came out about half hour ago.
It'd be a smart move for Edmonton. I don't understand Detroit.
In the division?
And on Ottawa, yeah, I can't see the Leafs trading.
But they have the assets. You're talking about 2 teams that have the assets.
And the cap space.
Yes.
Detroit does anyways. I'm not too sure about Ottawa. But Edmonton doesn't have the cap space. They just got rid of 2 good players for future considerations.
And I would have no idea who would be in that package coming back.
Would you
Unless
do
they're
it
sending
for?
Hyman back, but
Yeah. Interesting.
yeah,
I
and I'd also throw Carolina in there. To me, that makes too much sense, but I digress. But we were talking before we came on this thing, we were talking like packages and stuff, but this literally is on my feed naming 3 teams, and it makes sense because Treliving has to do his due diligence. He can't go into this like Dubas and then fold, and this is what started it all. He folded to Nylander. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
the other 2 took him for a ride as well. So in a sense, Treliving is doing what he needs to do, what's the best for this team. And you know what, Joe? You can probably get at least two solid assets like Winnipeg did to fill holes in the lineup.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to get a top 6 forward and a top pairing defenseman. There's nothing really wrong with that.
I think we're going to find out for sure what happens with this in the next couple days. I think we're going to get an answer to this, whether it's an extension or it's a trade. I think it's happening relatively soon. I don't think this drags on at all. And I don't mind Treliving playing hardball with him because by all accounts, and my sources indicate that Nylander loves playing in Toronto, loves being a Leaf.
Yep.
So I'm sure the team knows that. Maybe you got to play into that a little bit and say, Willie, we love you. We're willing to go to this. But if has to be this, we're working out a deal. Let us know, give us your teams. Or actually, we don't even need your teams because we still have a day to work out at something before that 10-team no trade kicks in anyways. So I don't mind it, but I would like to see them get something done. Even though, maybe it is time for a core shakeup, as they will. I just don't think he's the guy that should be moved. I think he's the easiest guy to move, and that's why they're moving him. I think Marner takes a lot more stones to do it, especially because he's the Toronto kid. But I think they could get. You're talking about multiple pieces for Nylander. They could probably get multiple pieces for Mitch as well.
I think the one for Marner,
he makes a lot more money, which
that's an issue.
Yes.
And it's cap space. Treliving said today too. It's like he even tried to make deals to like get extra picks and stuff, and just nobody's budging. He said, I'm trying to remember what the statement was. 5 years ago, the cap was $81.5 million.
It's gone up.
Fast forward 5 years, it's only gone up to 83.5.
Yeah, it's nuts.
That is not good. Number one, for the economics and growth of the game, but number 2, for player movement. And you're look at Edmonton. Edmonton gave away 2 solid players. They weren't great, but they were solid contributors to their lineup for future considerations in Yamamoto and Kostin.
Yeah.
That's and it's going to happen more and more, Joe. I think there's going to be a lot of players this year probably signing those $750,000, $800,000 deals, or else they're not going to be able to play. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of free agent signings on July 1st either, if this is what the money is going to command.
I could see a lot of guys maybe signing a 1-year deal and kicking the can down the road to next year when the cap is supposed to go up significantly.
And you know what scares me about that, Joe? Colorado, Tampa Bay, Boston, to try to get these guys on, hey, try to win a cup for 1 year and you figure out your cap space, or your contract next year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I can see Colorado signing, let's say Orlov for 1 year at $7 million, or just because they have the space to do it, just try to win again. You know what I mean?
Pacioretty's rumored to go there. And that's a guy that I think the Leafs should take a run at. I mean,
absolutely.
If you can get him for 1.5, I know because there's significant injury risk there.
Dude,
I think he'd be a great addition.
Signed him for $4 million in Chicago.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Nuts.
That's nuts. Even if they try to trade him at the deadline, who's going to take on a $2 million retained?
Yeah, I don't get it. It makes no sense to me.
Good for him, though.
So free agency is only a mere few days away. Well, by the time this pod goes out, it'll probably be a day away. Is there anyone out there that you would really want the Leafs to consider signing? Maybe it's one of their own UFAs.
I put a list together of 10 UFAs. If 2 out of 10 happen, I'd be pretty happy. But my list in no particular order. Obviously, Bertuzzi is probably the number one target.
I think he's getting.
I think someone's going to get overpaid. I think he may even get it in the sixes.
Yeah, I agree.
To be honest, I just don't want to see him in the division. Like I'd rather see him out west somewhere. I don't think he's going to sign in Canada just because I think he's still got that thing about wanting to play in the U.S. But I look at O'Reilly. Yeah, man, like he was really good here. I actually wouldn't mind giving him a crack at fully healthy O'Reilly. But again, there's a guy. If he's going to command 5 and change over 3 years or something like that, that's scary for me. So, I look at guys like why not Alex Killorn? He might be the consolation prize for teams that don't get Tyler Bertuzzi. But
I have a feeling I know where O'Reilly's going to end up.
Well, I did mention that on one of our episodes that I had a kind of like a nightmare that he ends up in Boston.
No, I don't think that. I think he ends up in Pittsburgh.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Because you got Dubas there, you got Spezza there, and I think they may be trying to convince him to head on over there.
Unfortunately, Joe, if they're going to improve this team, I don't think it's going to be via UFAs. I think it's going to be via trades. But like, I got some like not so sexy names, but I think they'd be big helps to this team. Scott Mayfield, defenseman from the Islanders. I like his game. Brian Dumoulin, defenseman, Pittsburgh. He was pretty solid.
All these guys, like these defensemen, they're all like second pair, third pair guys. These are what we have. If anything, if they're going to add a defenseman, I want them to take a swing and go for Erik Karlsson.
Oh, I was going to get to that.
He's the guy.
Yeah.
Because then you have him on one pair and Riley on one pair. And now you have those two horses at the back. Look at what Vegas had with Pietrangelo and Theodore on different, right? It just, we talk about the Leafs' inability to score.
The thing with the Karlsson deal is what are you sending back?
That's a great question.
I'm looking at this lineup. Like, what are you sending back? Like, yes, San Jose's in a rebuild, but you got to take back salary. So it's got to probably be a defenseman, like that has a little bit of term and cash behind them. So you're not sending McCabe. You're not sending Riley. You're not sending Liljegren, although that one scares me a bit because I think if they trade him, he may be a really good defenseman somewhere. And you're not very deep at the defenseman prospect pool either. I know you got Niemela coming, but he's not ready.
No.
I keep looking at Brody. Like, is he the centerpiece of a Karlsson deal? He's good. I like him.
Makes $5 million, so that money wise, that might be the guy.
The more San Jose retains, like I was reading a piece before we came on with Pierre LeBrun. If you get Karlsson at $9 million, you're right up there with like the guys like Tavares and Matthews and Marner, but the return may not be as bad.
Mm-hmm.
You get him at $8 million or $8.5 million. If you get him at like all this, the more
it's going to cost more, the more they retain. Yeah, that makes sense.
Are you going to throw the first in? Why not? At this point, throw the first in. Is it going to cost you a prospect? Probably a mid-level prospect. But like, at what point are you going to take a guy off your roster? Or is this where you shed the Murray contract? If you're going to add a first, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
I think there's a lot here, Joe. But at the end of the day, too, he's going to get dealt. You don't want him in your division. I think Florida's going to take a run at him. I think Ottawa's going to take a run at him. Carolina probably could take a run at him, even though they're not in the division. But like sometimes you may have to do this because you don't want to play against him, even though he's not a defensive threat. But Joe, what did we say last year? What is the one thing this team needs to make them like a viable scoring threat? It's a power play quarterback.
Yeah.
And a right-handed power play quarterback, if anything. A guy who logs that many minutes, right? Like, guys, he's coming off of Norris. He had 100 points with the San Jose Sharks, Joe.
Yeah,
if you insulate him with a good partner, I think you have to do it. At least inquire seriously about it.
And word is they're one of the teams that's
Yeah.
seriously interested.
Let
They
me
were
ask you
interested
a
at the
question, Joe.
deadline, I heard, but they couldn't make the dollars work.
Let me ask you a question. If you trade Nylander, okay, hypothetically, if you trade Nylander and you get a package back of, again, for the sake of argument, Joe, it's Necas and Pesce from Carolina. Let's just say. And you also make a deal for Erik Karlsson. You've added Necas, Pesce, and Karlsson among any of the UFAs you add. Are you a better team?
It's a good question.
This team may have more of a makeover than you think based on 2 trades. If you get rid of Nylander and add Karlsson, you got a guy who scored 100 points versus a guy who scored 80.
Yeah.
It's kind of, think about it, right? You're a better team, Joe.
It's going to be interesting, Frankie, that's for sure. And we're not going to take 3 weeks off in our next recording because a lot's going to happen over the next couple days. I think that's it for us right now, right?
I will tell you one thing, though.
Tell me. Go ahead.
I have a guest lined up. He is a quote unquote Maple Leaf, but he will be joining us in probably the second week of July, just off the development camp. So I'll announce it soon enough when I have everything finalized. But perfect guy. I think he's going to be a Leaf in, I'd say maybe 2 years, and pretty excited about it. And yeah, it's going to be good. So
friend of the show. Can't wait.
Friend of the show. Yeah.
All right, everybody. To all the Canadians out there that are listening, have a happy Canada Day, and we'll be back shortly when that July 1st free agency hits to break it all down and see what moves the Leafs make and other teams around them make, because a lot of movement is supposed to happen in the next couple of days, not just with free agency signings, but like we mentioned today, one of the dominoes could be a trade for Nylander if they can't swing a deal or an extension for him. So we'll be back for much more. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Joe Choffs with the Coach Frank. Talk to you soon, guys.
See ya.
Let's go Leafs.